the Wild is directed by Chris Sanders. It's based on the book by Jack London, and it stars Harrison Ford. The story follows Buck, who's taken from his home and sent up to northern Alaska to work as a sled dog. So the only thing I knew about this movie was that it was the Harrison Ford Call of the Wild movie with a CGI dog. So my expectations were pretty low going into this because usually those animal-focused CGI animal movies are pretty bad. What really struck me about the movie was that it felt very much like a Disney Renaissance film. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, the Disney Renaissance is just the animated Disney films from roughly the 90s. And so the film really had very similar feeling vibes to those kind of films in terms of its structure and the way it plotted things out in the story. And it all made sense at the end of the film when I saw who directed the movie. Chris Sanders. Chris Sanders started in animation in the late 80s, early 90s as an artist, and he worked his way into story and got to work on some of the most impressive and amazing Disney animated movies that ever got made, such as Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, Mulan. He designed Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, wrote the story, and then got to direct Lilo and Stitch, and that was his directorial debut. He then went on to write How to Train Your Dragon and direct that. He also wrote and directed on The Croods. So Chris Sanders is legit. So why does this feel like a Disney movie? Well, in a word, it's tight. There is no wasted screen time. Every scene is exactly as much as we need to get to know the characters, the situations, the emotions. The overall feeling of everything is as economical as it can possibly be. In fact, I rarely see movies that are this economical and this smart with their screen time. The movie is slow and thoughtful where it needs to be, it's fast-paced and energetic where it needs to be, and there seems to be no wasted time in the movie at all. The other noteworthy comparison to a Disney film would be the songs. Now, this movie has no songs, but Disney films from the 90s usually had musical numbers to help move things along, get the story progressing faster than it otherwise might if you didn't have the songs, which are usually montages to express emotions or ideas or what have you. This film replaces those with some narration by Harrison Ford, and we get montages of characters traveling or learning things or doing things, and Harrison Ford does a narration explaining what the characters are feeling or what we should be understanding about the plot as it moves forward. Which leads us to Harrison Ford, who I think did an amazing job in this movie. I haven't seen Harrison Ford put a performance in a film this good in years. And I don't know how they did it, whether they just gave Harrison Ford free rein, gave him a lot of direction, gave him a lot of takes. I don't know what they did, but Harrison Ford did an amazing job in this movie. In every scene he was in, he was incredibly compelling, a really wonderful leading man in this film, and just killed it. I think he absolutely killed it. Where he kind of failed was his narration. The scenes where he's narrating, you really feel Harrison Ford reading off of a script, and that's a little disappointing. I wish they could have done some more takes with Harrison Ford to try to get that narration to feel a little bit more natural and a little less forced. Ultimately, there isn't a ton of narration in the film, so it's not a huge problem, but it is a little awkward at times. And that brings us to our big star of the movie, Buck the dog. This dog, and every animal in the movie, in fact, is entirely CGI. Now, generally speaking, that's not a great thing because most directors don't have the experience with animation or the experience with visual effects to get it to look consistently good. But with Chris Sanders at the wheel, a veteran in animation, a veteran director of animation, he was able to get the dog and all the animals to look incredibly consistent throughout the film. Now, it's not to say it's perfect. The beginning of the movie looks, I think, the worst. The scenes with Buck at the start of the film look a little less believable. But by the time we're 20 minutes into the movie, it looks amazing. And we're getting these incredible scenes of physicality and movement. We're also getting these really touching scenes of acting out of the dog. And the really impressive thing is the amount of character development that is in Buck. I mean, Buck is this CGI dog, and he honestly has more character development and growth than Rey from Star Wars does. Shots fired. I think that it's really well done. Like, the character of Buck, who never says a word in the whole movie, has a clearly defined character and value system, and we really believe in this animal in all of his different scenarios he gets put into.
How do you feel about an adventure beyond all maps?
We could go, you and I.
Where no one's ever been before.
Related to the CG is the visuals, the general visuals of what are we seeing in camera. And a huge chunk of this film takes place in the wilds of Alaska. And so we're just getting these beautiful scenes of pine forests and, you know, wild elk or deer, you know, roaming through wild plains. And it's just incredibly beautiful. And, you know, it makes me want to take a vacation up to Alaska and just experience the wilderness out there. It's just stunning to look at. It's really amazing. I couldn't find fault with it at all. We're getting these beautiful vistas. They're incredibly well rendered. Are they real? Are they CG? I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. They look great, and they work beautifully for the story. So it's time for my final recommendation for The Call of the Wild. My final score is going to be a 9 out of 10. I really loved this movie. It's got some awkward things in it. The narration's a little weird at times, and I do wish there were some scenes that were a little longer so we could really soak in that relationship between Harrison Ford and Buck. There's also some pretty one-note simplistic cartoonish villains because they're not given a whole lot of screen time in order to flesh them out, but for what they are, they work perfectly adequately. This is a definite must-see in the theater. I think people are going to be talking about this movie and still loving to watch it 20 years from now. It's so well made, it's so well crafted, and it's just really fun. It's a wonderful movie to take the kids to, and yeah, I really love this film and recommend it to everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of The Call of the Wild. If you guys enjoy the content, do all that regular YouTube stuff, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm a new channel trying to grow, so it would help me out a ton. Thanks a lot. Until next time, have a good one.